here's how I thought of the use case, right? I said, well, what's the use case in this thing? So I put myself kind of back when I started out on this journey, and I looked at everything that was tough, where we actually had to expend considerable effort in moving the ball forward. And I figured as somebody starts out on trying to do this as a CDO, they would have the same difficulties. So these use cases really are meant in that context. So they're not all technological, but they do relate to those 4 circles that we had in the previous slide. One is data responsibility. Jim talked about this. I'll just touch on why it's so critical. And as you move forward with your senior management, this question is going to come up. The reason it's going to come up, when you think of an AI system like a Watson, that's essentially in the middle of every decision, that system is capturing your intellectual capital. It's actually going to the crux of the heart of your company, what makes your company great, the trade secrets, the intellectual property, the intellectual capital, the expertise in the heads of your people and so forth who are now actually working with these systems. So as soon as a senior executive realizes that, there's all kinds of concern about, well, how are you going to move forward with this? Is this something that we really want to do? What's the implication on the organization side? That's why this is critical. And on this one, we're very clear on how we want to proceed. If it's your data, it belongs to you. Not only that, any insights from that data are yours. And we're very clear in terms of that particular aspect of this, because we believe that a company really can't move forward to a cognitive enterprise unless the partner you're working with is very clear on this. So like Jim said, there's a document outside. We think that's very important. That'll help you in preparing for those discussions. Even, it'll help you with other things which are kind of one level below this, which is if you move things to the cloud, the CEOs, the senior executives have concerns around security, trust, and all that. This will help you. That data responsibility document will help you in that regard. So that's why we put it in there. We think that's something that'll surface pretty quickly once you go down this path, and that's what that one is about. And we have people here who can help clarify, amplify on all that stuff. You met Glenn, there's Seth Dobrin, Bruce Tyler was mentioned, Caitlin, the number of people from my area, they're all scattered around the audience. They'll be able to help you with all this as we move forward. And I've been doing this job, this is my 4th go around, so I have it down to a craft. And there are certain steps that you have to take, and we're happy to amplify that, and I can get more into the details, but one of the critical steps is creating a data strategy. Should be done within 6 months of starting the job. And it takes a lot of work. It's got to be aligned with a business strategy. And so how do you do that? So that's something that essentially, the way we're handling this with our clients who want to work with us and who are moving forward with this is, I just start out by sharing my data strategy. This is what I did for IBM in the first 6 months when I joined. And then you can kind of even see how that's evolved, and it gives you a jump start. It really helps you accelerate your own thinking along that lines. So that's an important use case that comes up and comes up early. And that's something that from an internal standpoint, that's how we would help you with that. And then we've got the delivery arms, our partners on the sides of GBS with Glenn, or the analytics unit with Seth, or lab solutions. And Caitlin will be able to put all that together, but it'll help you accelerate and jumpstart what you're trying to do. So next question, you've got the strategy down. What do you do next? Well, the next piece is the architecture itself. Well, what do you put together from a technology standpoint? How do you do it? Now you've got unstructured data and structured data. How do you set this up? People talk about cloud. Is it public cloud? Is it hybrid cloud? Is it on-prem? How do you mix all that stuff together? How do you accelerate the response time now that you do have all this data? So we're going to just share that architecture with you. I mean, you can even hop on a plane with me to Zurich, where we essentially have our hybrid cloud, the cognitive enterprise data platform that Jim talked about, to help you understand how we're doing it internally to IBM. Now, it may not be an exact one-on-one match to what you need to get done, but it sure as well will get you started, and started very, very quickly, I would submit, in terms of understanding, how we are going about it, how we're doing it, how we're actually architecting for cognition within the context of IBM internally. So what do you do once you've got the architecture set up? Well, one thing it can do can help you accelerate enterprise-wide activities. The example I've picked up here is GDPR. So for those of you in global companies operating in Europe, this is the European Union General Data Privacy Regulation, which takes effect in May of 2018. And it's a huge event. We think it's of the caliber of Y2K. So companies have to get ready for it, otherwise they face very stiff penalties, ranging into 3 to 4% of your turnover, what they call, which is your revenue. So from a cognition standpoint, we're able to build accelerators very rapidly that allow you to get to GDPR. So essentially going through the regulations, having Watson go through the regulations, and then being able to compare it to the various contracts that you may have to come up with suggestions as to where you need to have changes, what kind of changes, and so on and so forth. They have a requirement that a subject can give you a request to essentially provide back to them all data that you have on them. How do you do that? Now you're talking about a really, really smart data cataloging mechanism across the enterprise. So these types of cognitive architectures actually help you do that. And we've done these accelerators that we're using internally. And again, we're happy to share that with you in the context of our offerings around that. And in fact, Seth here is an expert on that area, and it has been in the design of those offerings right from the beginning. You can take whatever we do in cognition with the deep learning, machine learning, AI, and you can actually apply it back to the CDO processes themselves. And I talked about metadata generation and how that's so difficult because it's largely manual. So this is something that we've essentially determined now that we can automate this substantially. So in terms of being able to label the columns of data that come in business-friendly terminology, we can do that automatically in our tests that we've done. We know it's upwards of 75% of the time already, and we think it's going to get much higher. Remember, we're doing this with all the technology that we have available today. So these are different IBM offerings putting that together. So it's basically an example of a process internal to CDO that you can advance very, very rapidly by making use of these technologies.